She was the daughter of England's greatest king. One day, she would rule for over 4 decades and lead England into its golden age. But at 13, she was helpless. Every morning, he came, barefoot, half-dressed, grinning. Her stepfather, he touched her, climbed into her bed, and no one stopped him. Not even the woman who loved them both, the Queen Dowager, Catherine Parr. This is the story history tried to bury, the dark secret that shaped England's greatest queen, because before Elizabeth became the Virgin Queen, she was just a girl who learned that men in power take what they want, a girl who wrote 3 desperate words on a letter: "Let him not touch me." But he did touch her, again and again. And what happened in those morning visits would echo through history. It would decide her fate, her crown, her choice never to marry. This is the true story of young Elizabeth and the man who broke something inside her that never quite healed. If this story resonates with you, hit the like button. It truly helps this channel grow. And share this with fellow history lovers who crave the truth behind the crown. January 1547, Enfield Palace. Elizabeth stands at a window. Ice covers the glass. Her breath makes clouds in the cold air. She's 13 years old. Her father just died. Henry VIII, King of England, the man who split the church, the man who married 6 times, the man who killed her mother, and now he's gone. Elizabeth is alone. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, was beheaded when Elizabeth was 2. She barely remembers her face, and now her father is dead too. But she's not just an orphan, she's a princess, 3rd in line to the throne of England. Her little brother Edward is king now. He's 9 years old. Then there's Mary, her older half-sister, and then Elizabeth, close enough to the throne to be dangerous, far enough that she has no protection. Wrong religion, wrong mother, wrong everything. One mistake could cost her life. Elizabeth knows this. She's always known this. So she learns. She studies 6 languages: Latin, Greek, French, Italian, Spanish. She reads philosophy. She reads theology. She makes herself brilliant because intelligence is her only weapon. Her governess, Cat Ashley, is the closest thing to a mother she has. Cat teaches her, protects her, loves her. Elizabeth lives in royal palaces, but never quite belongs anywhere. She's the king's daughter, but her mother was a traitor. She's a princess, but she might be nothing tomorrow. And into this fragile world walks Thomas Seymour. He's 38 years old, handsome, charming, smooth as silk. He's the brother of Jane Seymour, one of Elizabeth's stepmothers, who died giving birth to the new king. That makes Thomas the uncle of King Edward VI. His older brother, Edward Seymour, just became Lord Protector. He basically rules England now, while the boy king grows up. And Thomas? Thomas is jealous. He wants power too. He wants control. He wants to matter. And when he looks at Elizabeth, he sees his chance. February 1547, 1 month after her father's death, a letter arrives for Elizabeth. She opens it. Thomas Seymour is asking her to marry him. She's 13 years old. He's 38. 25 years older than she is. Elizabeth reads the letter carefully. Her hands don't shake. She's been trained for this, for danger dressed up as courtesy. She writes back. Her response is elegant, graceful, firm. She's too young, she says. She's in mourning for her father. She'll mourn for 2 years. No. She sends the letter. Thomas Seymour receives it, and within a month, he marries someone else. Catherine Parr, Henry VIII's last wife. the Queen Dowager, Elizabeth's beloved stepmother. Catherine had loved Thomas for years, even before she married Henry. Now the king is dead, and she's free to marry the man she actually wants. They marry quickly, quietly, secretly, and Elizabeth moves in with them. Was that the plan all along? Did Thomas marry Catherine just to get closer to Elizabeth? We'll never know for certain, but what happens next tells us everything we need to know about Thomas Seymour. June 1547. Just days after Thomas moves into Catherine's house, Elizabeth wakes up to footsteps outside her door. It's early morning, still dark. The door opens. Thomas Seymour walks in. He's wearing a short nightgown. His legs are bare, slippers on his feet. Elizabeth is still in bed, still in her nightdress. He walks toward her. She shrinks back against the headboard. He grins, says good morning, like nothing's wrong. His hand reaches out, strikes her back, then lower, a cruel, familiar touch. She freezes. He leaves, and the silence that follows hurts more than the blow. The next morning, Elizabeth wakes up earlier, gets dressed before dawn. Maybe if she's dressed, he'll go away. But when he comes, he stays longer, talks to her, touches her again. The morning after that, she wakes even earlier. But one morning, he doesn't just touch her and leave. He climbs into her bed while she's still in it. Cat Ashley notices. Elizabeth's governess sees the pattern. The early morning visits, the state of undress, the way Elizabeth flinches. Cat starts sitting in Elizabeth's rooms in the early mornings. A chaperone, a guard. Thomas Seymour doesn't care. He keeps coming. Cat confronts him one morning. She's brave. She's furious. "Go away, for shame," she tells him. He smiles at her. "I meant no evil," he mocks, but his eyes say otherwise, and he doesn't stop. And then what happened next was even worse. Catherine Parr, the woman who loved her most, her stepmother, joined him. Twice, the Queen Dowager herself came with Thomas on those morning visits. Together, they laughed as they tickled Elizabeth in her bed. She was 14, and the only woman she trusted had just betrayed her. Why does Catherine do this? Is she blind to what's happening? Does she think it's just harmless fun? Is she jealous and trying to control it by participating? We don't know. History doesn't tell us what Catherine was thinking, but we do know what happened next. Autumn 1547. The gardens at Hanworth. Thomas finds Elizabeth outside. Catherine is nearby. He starts wrestling with Elizabeth, playing rough, grabbing her. Then he pulls out scissors. He cuts her gown, her black morning dress, cuts it into 100 pieces, while Catherine holds her. But how did she hold her? Did Catherine grip her arms to keep her still while Thomas tore the fabric? Did she pull Elizabeth close, pretending to protect her? Or did she laugh with him, treating it all like a harmless game? No one knows for sure. The records fall silent, leaving only questions. Catherine isn't the same. Her warmth toward Elizabeth cools, replaced by suspicion. She suddenly orders Cat Ashley, Elizabeth's governess, to keep an eye on her every move. Catherine claims Thomas told her he'd seen Elizabeth with another man, hugging him, embracing him. But no one else saw such a thing. No servants, no witnesses. Cat Ashley begins to understand Catherine's story is a lie, a made-up excuse to justify her growing jealousy, to keep Elizabeth and Thomas under closer watch. Soon after, Catherine and Thomas moved to London for several months.
leaving Elizabeth behind at Hatfield House. For the first time in a long while, she's safe. No footsteps outside her door at dawn. No fear of who might walk in. He took her power when she was 13. But one day, she'd take it back, and the world would remember her as the Virgin Queen. No man's Elizabeth.
But in the spring of 1548, everything changes. Catherine calls for Elizabeth to join them again, this time at Chelsea Manor, the grand riverside home where the Queen Dowager and her husband are now living. At first, it seems harmless. Catherine wants her stepdaughter close again, to guide her studies, to show a united household. But the moment Elizabeth returns, the old pattern begins to creep back. The morning visits start up again. Thomas comes to her room, half-dressed, early, always smiling, that same smile. Cat Ashley confronts him once more. "This is a maiden's chamber," she warns. He pretends not to hear her and keeps coming back. What happens when a predator lives in your own home? You start to lose your voice. Your words feel dangerous. Your body doesn't belong to you anymore. Elizabeth is learning this, but she's also learning something else. She's learning to survive.
June 1548. Catherine writes a letter to Thomas and asks Elizabeth to arrange for a messenger to deliver it. Elizabeth takes the letter in her hands. For a moment, she hesitates. Then, on the outside, she writes 3 words in Latin: "Thou touch me not." She stares at them. The truth feels too raw, too direct, too dangerous. Slowly, she crosses the words out, and in their place, she writes instead, "Let him not touch me." Even in desperation, she's careful. Even when she's screaming silently, she's diplomatic. She can't say, "Don't touch me," to his face. He's too powerful, too dangerous. So she writes it on a letter, where maybe Catherine will see. Maybe Catherine will understand. A message in a bottle. A cry for help written in Latin, so only the educated will know what she's saying. 3 words, crossed out and rewritten. Those 3 words tell us everything. Years later, when Cat Ashley testifies about this time, she says Elizabeth did bear some affection toward Thomas Seymour. She says Elizabeth blushed when his name was mentioned. But what does blushing mean? Does it mean she liked him? Or does it mean she was ashamed, traumatized, confused? A 14-year-old girl can't consent to what was happening. But a 14-year-old girl can be groomed into thinking she wanted it. That's what grooming does. It twists your reality, makes you doubt yourself, makes you believe maybe you're the problem. Some people argue that in the Tudor era, the idea of teenagers didn't exist, that you were either a child or an adult. And they're right about the word, but think about it for a moment. The human brain hasn't changed in 500 years. A 14-year-old then was no more capable of real consent than a 14-year-old now. The difference was only in how society saw them, not in how their minds worked. To me, it doesn't matter whether we call her a teenager or not. At 14, she was still vulnerable, still easy to manipulate, still growing into herself. And like every young person, then or now, she deserved protection, not exploitation. But that protection finally comes, though not in the way anyone expected. June 11th, 1548, Chelsea Manor. Catherine walks into a room in her own house. She finds her husband and her stepdaughter alone together. Thomas has Elizabeth in his arms. He's holding her, embracing her. Catherine sees it, and she reacts with rage. The historical record says the Queen fell out with both of them. She's furious, hurt, betrayed. The very next day, June 12, Elizabeth leaves.
She goes to live with Cat Ashley's sister at Cheshire, miles away. Catherine and Thomas go to Sudeley Castle. Did Elizabeth choose to leave, or was she sent away? We don't know, but she was gone, and she never lived with them again. All summer, Elizabeth has been sick. Migraines, jaundice, problems with her stomach. Her menstruation becomes irregular. Stress does this. Trauma does this. 60 years later, rumors would spread that she'd been pregnant that summer. The evidence is laughably weak, easily disproven. The truth is simpler and sadder. She was a traumatized child. Catherine writes to Elizabeth while they're apart. The letters are affectionate, kind, no anger in them. Maybe Catherine understood what happened. Maybe she was trying to protect Elizabeth by sending her away. Maybe she knew that soon she'd go into confinement for childbirth and wouldn't be able to stop Thomas anymore. Or maybe she was just trying to smooth things over, keep the peace. We'll never know what Catherine truly felt.
Because on September 5th, 1548, 1 week after giving birth to a daughter, Catherine Parr dies. She's 36 years old. She and Elizabeth never see each other again after that day in June. There's no reconciliation, no goodbye, no chance to explain. Catherine is dead, and Thomas Seymour is alive, very much alive. And now there's nothing between him and Elizabeth.
Only weeks after Catherine Parr's death, when grief should have broken him, he turned his eyes back to his stepdaughter.
Elizabeth, now nearly 15, had moved to Hatfield House to establish her own household. Seymour, restless and obsessed, couldn't let go. He sent his nephew, John Seymour, to accompany her there. But his true purpose wasn't chivalry. It was something darker. According to Thomas Parry, Elizabeth's treasurer, Seymour ordered John to ask Elizabeth a question, and the question is whether her great buttocks were grown any less or no.
Yes, you heard it right. This wasn't courtship. It wasn't romance. It was a grown man reducing a 15-year-old girl to her body.
He wasn't sending love. He was sending control. A warning, a reminder. I still see you. I still think about your body. I still want you. This wasn't affection. It was ownership, humiliation, power disguised as desire. He didn't ask if she was safe, if she was healing, if she was grieving her stepmother's death. He only reminded her that even now, she wasn't free from him. Why did he do this? Pride makes men careless, and Thomas Seymour was no exception. He thought himself untouchable, handsome, charming, the Queen Dowager's husband, the King's uncle. Seymour wanted power. After Queen Catherine Parr died, he hoped to marry Elizabeth. If he married the King's daughter, a possible future queen, he could become one of the most powerful men in England. He was playing a deadly game, one that would soon turn on him.
By the winter of 1548, rumors were spreading like wildfire. People whispered that Thomas Seymour planned to marry Princess Elizabeth without the Privy Council's consent, without the King's consent. This is illegal. This is treason. Thomas Parry, Elizabeth's accountant, asks her directly, would you marry him if he asked? Elizabeth's answer is perfect. Classic Elizabeth. When that comes to pass, I will do as God shall put in my mind. She says everything. She says nothing. Parry watches her carefully. He thinks she knows about Thomas's interest, but he doesn't think she returns it. She keeps her guard up. And then Thomas Seymour's ambition finally catches up with him. January 1549, he's arrested. The charges are serious. Treason level serious. He tried to kidnap King Edward VI, his own nephew, the boy king. He planned to marry Elizabeth without permission. He wanted to make himself the real power behind the throne. Cat Ashley is arrested. Thomas Parry is arrested. They're interrogated. The Privy Council wants to know, was Elizabeth involved? Did she know about the plot? Cat and Thomas testify about everything. The morning visits, the bed, the touching, the gown in the garden, the embrace in the room. They're trying to save themselves, and they're trying to save Elizabeth. Elizabeth is questioned too. She's 15 years old now, and she defends herself brilliantly. She's witty, careful, clever. She's like her mother, Anne Boleyn, quick, intelligent, unflinching under pressure. But unlike Anne, she hides her fire. She doesn't argue. She doesn't show anger. She admits nothing, implicates no one, gives them nothing to use against her. She survives. March 20th, 1549, Tower Hill. The executioner's block is ready. The crowd gathers. Thomas Seymour walks to his death the same way he lived. Arrogant, careless, convinced somehow that this isn't really happening. Even now, even at the end, he believes his charm will save him, that his royal connections matter, that being the king's uncle means something. They don't. The axe falls. He's 40 years old. When Elizabeth hears the news, she says just one sentence. This day died a man with much wit and very little judgment. Cold, detached, controlled. No tears, no emotion, not a crack in her voice. But think about what she didn't say. She didn't call him her stepfather, didn't mention his name with affection, didn't pray for his soul. She reduced him to exactly what he was, a clever fool who destroyed himself. He thought he could control her, marry her, use her to gain power. Instead, he died on Tower Hill while she walked free. He was gone. Elizabeth was free. But the damage he did would shape the queen she would become.
9 years later, 1558, Elizabeth becomes Queen of England. She's 25 years old. Everyone expects her to marry. A queen needs a husband, an heir, security. But Elizabeth refuses. Kings come courting, princes, dukes, ambassadors from every corner of Europe. She flirts with them, charms them, plays the game beautifully, but she never says yes. Why? Maybe she loved her freedom too much. Maybe she didn't trust men. Maybe marriage meant giving up power, and she'd fought too hard to get it. Or maybe it was Thomas Seymour. She learned something when she was 13 years old. She learned that men want her for her crown, not her heart. When a man came courting, he had one eye on her and one eye on the throne. Thomas Seymour taught her that. He wanted her body, her status, her position as a princess. He never wanted her. And so, when the world pressed her to marry, she stood her ground, because she had already seen what desire could become in the wrong hands. She had seen charm turn cruel, affection turns into power. She had learned it in the dark corridors of her childhood from a man who should have protected her, not touched her. She was 13 when Thomas Seymour taught her what it meant to be powerless, and Elizabeth swore she would never feel that way again. She learned the hardest truth of all. Even the people who say they love you can fail to protect you. Even Catherine Parr, the woman she trusted most, looked away when Elizabeth needed her most. She would rule, but never be ruled. Loved, but never owned. I am a no man's Elizabeth. I will have one mistress here and no master, she said with pride, because long before she wore the crown, she had already written the words that defined her life. Let him not touch me.
She wrote those words at 14, but she lived them for the rest of her life. No man would touch her, no man would control her. She would be England's queen, and England's alone.
Elizabeth reigned for 45 years. The Virgin Queen, Gloriana, Good Queen Bess. She defeated the Spanish Armada, expanded England's empire, presided over a golden age. She did it all without a husband. She chose to live alone. Elizabeth knew exactly what her choice meant. If she died without children, the Tudor bloodline would end. Her family name would vanish from the throne. The crown would pass to Scotland, to James VI, son of Mary, Queen of Scots, the cousin Elizabeth had executed. Everything her father built, everything her grandfather fought for, the Tudor dynasty itself, gone. And still, she chose not to marry. Still, she chose not to let any man rule her. Why? Modern psychology gives us answers the Tudors never had. Children who experience abuse often struggle with intimacy as adults. They learn that closeness means danger, that trust leads to betrayal. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Elizabeth's body remembered those morning visits, the touching, the fear, the helplessness. Marriage would mean sharing her bed, sharing her body, giving a man access to her private spaces again. After Thomas Seymour, could she ever feel safe doing that?
From where we stand today, the truth is clear. A 38-year-old man visiting a 13-year-old girl's bedroom, touching her, climbing into her bed. That's not an affair. That's abuse. But in 1547, things looked different. Girls could marry at 14. Age gaps were normal. Still, her servants thought his behavior was shameful. They tried to stop it. Elizabeth tried to avoid him, wrote desperate warnings, was sent away, got sick all summer.
Can we say with certainty he sexually abused her? No. The sources leave room for doubt, but he harassed her, invaded her space, touched her without consent, groomed her, and whether or not it crossed into physical abuse, it was wrong. For too long, history called this a love affair, blamed Elizabeth for blushing, ignored the power imbalance, the age gap, the fear. Elizabeth deserves better. So when you think of Elizabeth I, don't just remember the crown, the speeches, the armada.
Remember the 13-year-old girl, the one who learned that being a princess didn't protect her, that being smart didn't save her, that even the people who loved her couldn't or wouldn't stop him. Remember the girl who once pleaded with her mother, "Let him not touch me." That's the real story of the Virgin Queen. It doesn't start with a crown. It starts in the darkness of a teenage girl's bedroom, where she learned that survival sometimes means choosing yourself, even when it costs everything. When the world expects you to say yes, she said no, and she never stopped saying it.